Good afternoon, with great pleasure. Welcome you to another edition of Business This Week on ITV. I am Blessing AJ. Now today we'll be looking at some economic concerns. I guess you want to know what they are. Well, I do not want to let the cat out of the bag. I ask that you stay and find that out. Let's bring you a roundup of business activities for the week. So in Business Roundup, our first story says Nigeria has lost its Africa's top oil producer status to Libya as its crude oil production fell further last month amid lingering supply disruptions, according to a new report by the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. Nigeria told OPEC that its oil output fell to about 1.23 million barrels per day in October from about 1.25 million barrels per day in the previous month. The cartel's latest report revealed Libya, which overtook Angola as the second biggest producer on the continent in December last year, saw its oil production rise to 1.24 million barrels per day in October from 1.16 million barrels per day in September, based on direct communication, according to OPEC. OPEC uses secondary sources to monitor its oil output, but also publishes a table of figures submitted by its member countries. According to secondary sources, Nigeria's production declined by 45,000 barrels per day to 1.35 million barrels per day in October from about 1.40 million barrels per day in September. Nigeria recorded the second biggest drop in output in October among its peers in OPEC, after Iraq, based on direct communication. The country's production fell the most in the month, according to secondary sources. The 13-member oil cartel said its total crude production averaged 27.45 million barrels per day in October, higher by 220,000 barrels per day month on month, according to secondary sources. OPEC said crude differentials of light and medium sweet crude rose in the Mediterranean and West African markets in October on good buying interest from European buyers, strong refining margins, supply disruptions in Libya and Nigeria. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, has described fuel subsidy as a major waste and a drain on the Nigerian economy, saying the government plans to replace it with transport subsidy to assuage the effect of its removal on the masses for a short period. She said the Petroleum Industry Act that has been passed has a provision that says petroleum products should be deregulated, which means there should be no subsidy of any petroleum product. Other than that, government assumes that this deregulation would take effect from July 2022. According to her, fuel subsidy only benefits people with several cars and not the masses. Ahmed said government is looking at providing some palliatives for a large number of the population in terms of a transport subsidy for a short period, like 6 to 12 months. Transport subsidy that would be given straight to individuals. According to the minister, the government is also engaging with the World Bank in designing a program that will help to provide succor for a minimum of 6 months and a maximum of 12 months to enable the government to make the transition. She said the government was considering the possibility of ending fuel subsidy before July 2022. Now let's turn to telecommunications. The Global System for Mobile Communications Association says $500 million and 6,000 base stations are needed for 5G rollout in the top 10 cities in Nigeria. The telecom industry umbrella organization with more than 750 mobile operators as members disclosed this in its comments to the Nigerian Communications Commission on its draft information memorandum for the auction of 3.5 gigahertz spectrum. The association said the $197.4 million benchmark for spectrum auction was high and might affect the actual rollout of the 5G network. According to GSMA, the NCC at first disclosed this in its Nigerian National Broadband Plan 2020 to 2025. The association added that the reserve price for the 5G spectrum was not reflective of what the broadband hopes to achieve. According to GMA, high spectrum prices will lead to reduced coverage, download speeds, and mobile broadband adoption. The association added that the market should be allowed to determine spectrum assignments, as regulators might unintentionally make decisions about spectrum auctions that distort fair market competition by setting aside spectrum and restricting the amount of spectrum operators can access. The NCC, however, said it benchmarked its reserve price after considering other jurisdictions, in addition to other variables which might not have been considered by other studies before arriving at its reserve price, which it believes is reasonable. The NCC added that its reserve price remains $197.4 million. According to a network provider, the market value for 100 megagigahertz spectrum is $83.7 million. Therefore, the NCC's reserve price is 136% higher than the estimated market value, and it does not align with a materially discounted market value of spectrum. The Executive Vice Chairman, NCC, Umar Dambata, said the Commission was set to make 632.39 billion naira from the sale of 5G spectrum to telecommunications firms, among other revenue sources, in 2022. The story completes Business Roundup for the week. We're going to quick break. When we return, we'll begin to talk about the economic concerns. Okay, let me give you an info into one of them. We're looking at excise duty for Manufacturers Association, those who are into the production of non-alcoholic drinks. The rest you get to know after the break. Okay, thank you for staying with us. All right, I did twist you there. I told you we'll begin talking about excise duties for producers and also importers of non-alcoholic drinks. Well, we'll do that after we talk about Nigeria's Autogas initiative. Now the federal government had been on a campaign for about a year. Actually, 2020 was declared as the year of gas by the federal government, that it would give the alternative of using gas to run vehicles instead of petrol and diesel. So I have with me today two wonderful gentlemen. Now, one of them is Joshua Oluwaseyi, is a climate change activist. Welcome to the show, Joshua.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
It's my pleasure to host you. And so we have a very regular face, Destiny Owobo, economist and statistician. Welcome to the show, Destiny.
Thank you very much.
All right, now let's talk about the Autogas initiative. Now, from 2020, the federal government had started talking about it. It even went as far as saying that the conversion of vehicles from being run on petrol or diesel to gas would be free. But somewhere along the line, it changed its mind. But now it's saying it will give 250 billion naira to investors, those who want to set up conversion centers. But let's even understand the whole process first of all. Now, what's involved in converting from using petrol or diesel to run a vehicle to now run on gas? So let me begin with you, Destiny.
Yeah, I think currently the government spends about 1.2 to 6 trillion to subsidize petrol. And then the dependence on petrol in Nigeria is sinking the budget. You know, if you have to use that amount of money to subsidize just one product, when Nigeria has alternative like gas is cleaner, more environmentally friendly, and we have more abundance of gas.
Okay.
Nigeria has about 200 billion cubic feet of gas in reserves.
Gas
So
deposits.
we have not even tapped 5% of the potential of that gas market.
Okay.
And so I think the federal government is trying to find a way to make Nigeria's dependence on petrol reduce in the next 5 to 10 years, so that these subsidy issues will not come up. And secondly, give what we call alternative to the average Nigerian consumer. Because anytime you depend too much on the product,
Okay.
the Nigerians are tied to the market price of petrol and crude oil. You can't put the life of your nation, economic life of your nation, on one singular product, whose market is very volatile and the price is determined elsewhere. You know, so we can tap into the gas reserves, especially when government is increasing our gas production capabilities.
Okay.
And I think the challenge here is we don't manufacture cars as much in this country. And so most of these cars we are going to buy are going to come from this developed world, and most of them still work on petrol system. But there's something I worry about. The biggest car maker now is an electric vehicle manufacturer.
I was going to ask why gas?
Yes.
Why not cars that
and a lot
will
of
be run
investments
on,
are going towards electric vehicle
Mm.
manufacturing. So are we going to switch from electric back to gas in the future? Because gas is not really the big thing right now. The world is going towards electric.
Okay.
If you see, Tesla is the biggest automaker in the world now in just about 10, 15 years.
Okay.
That gives you the direction of the world. The world is going towards electric vehicles, which is even cheaper than gas. Now, somehow the economics of it will show that the consumers will benefit better if they use electric vehicles than if they use gas. So
Okay.
the federal government is trying to do this gas master plan thing. How long will this policy lead? Are we looking at 10, 15, 20 years time? Are we looking at 30 years time? Or is it just a 5-year short-term plan? And secondly, we have about 2.2 million vehicles in this country. So if you give 200 billion to set up this gas infrastructure, this conversion infrastructure, that is very small compared to the number of cars in this country. And the total conversion rate, if we spend 200,000 naira to convert a car, and you need to convert 2.2 million cars in the long run, that will cost us trillions and trillions and trillions of naira, not 250,000 naira. I think it's just like a pebble in the wide ocean. You know, this conversion is easy on paper, but when you look at the facts on the ground, 2.2 million vehicles in a country, all of them coming with normal petrol tanks, and then you need to convert to gas. It's easy when it's 200 billion is a paltry sum compared to the big challenge. If you want to really shift in policy from petrol to gas, it will require trillions, not $250 billion. So whilst a noble idea on paper is very beautiful, we need to do this conversion. But it's going to cost, we are going to have logistic problems when we are trying to really do this.
We'll come to the feasibility of the plan. But let's look at this from the environmental angle. Do you smile getting to know that the federal government wants to convert vehicles that run on petrol to gas?
On the contrary, no, I do not. Like you said, it's a noble idea, it's a noble initiative on paper, it's political, but the reality is we just rounded up something called COP26, which is the conference of the parties, which is basically the United Nations countries that are signed to basically reducing carbon emissions by 2050 and, you know, going green, basically. And Nigeria is a part of that. You know, the president of COP was in Nigeria just weeks before the conference started. And we've pledged to, you know, reduce carbon emissions by 2030, 2050, 2070. But somehow, when the world is moving into electricity, like it's electric vehicles, we're, you know, championing gas. Technically, economically, in fact, you could say, yes, you know, we have reserves of that. But the truth is the world is looking for sustainable alternatives to that. Gas is not sustainable, it's not renewable energy, of course. So there's so much more energy sources that we could harvest, that we could, you know, use for our vehicles or our power our homes. If you're gonna have gas for cars, which again sounds good, what about those who, you said there are 2.2 million vehicles in, you know, the country. There are even more generators. Registered vehicles. There are even more generators, right? So if you're taking fuel away from vehicles, what about the millions of households that own their generators every night are using fuel? Would they also transfer to gas? You know, so those are the questions that need to be answered. And I think statistically, gas is it's cleaner, but it's ever so slight. It wouldn't have much of an effect on like the amount of carbon emissions every year as far as CF generators that are running. So yeah, I think we should be looking towards electricity, and I'm not smiling about it.
So it will not even yield a huge benefit to the environment at the end of the day.
Of course.
Okay, now let's go back to feasibility of the plan.
Yes.
Now, until there was a high demand placed on cooking gas, now cooking gas was readily available. You just get to the nearby station and you fill your gas. Until everybody started moving away from kerosene to cooking gas. Now, for you to buy gas is very expensive. So you can easily get to petrol station, except where there is fuel scarcity, for you to get fuel, petrol or diesel to buy. So if those cars, the number of cars that we have, let's assume there's a successful conversion of those cars to run on gas. What is the chance that gas would be readily available for every car user to just get into an auto gas station and get filled?
Yes, these were the logistic problems I talked about. You know, there are many issues. You have to look at it from the 360 angle, not just from the car's angle. The demand for gas is fueled by a lot of factors. Domestic demand, for commercial demand for cooking and things like that. But when you convert cars to gas, it means the total demand for gas will increase.
Okay.
The economists predict that the price of gas generally will increase.
Okay.
So it's like one policy taking by with one right hand, giving by the right hand and taking with the left hand.
Okay.
What will happen to domestic use of gas? Will the price go up or down? Now, question: will the investment in that industry be sufficient to cover up for the demand in that industry? That's the question. How many players are going to the gas industry in the next 5 to 10 years? What will government do to fill up the supply gap? Because like currently, what do you think is the problem we are facing now? Foreign exchange problems is what simply increase the price of gas in just this short time. So what will happen when you now convert cars to gas, and a lot of cars are going to gas, and then what will happen to the economics of pricing? Will the average user be able to buy gas at a reasonable price? That's the question. You know, a population that's increasing at 3% per annum, 206 million people. We expect that by 2050, Nigeria should be 400 million people. We have to be looking at the big issues. 400 million people, and by that, at our current growth rate, we are going to have nothing less than 10 million vehicles in this country. Now, with 10 million vehicles, 400 million people, at least 80 million households, you can try and imagine the total demand of gas. What will happen to is there sufficient investment in that area? That's why I said 230 billion. What exactly is that? 230 billion.
250 billion.
250 billion naira. We are talking about a sector, a master plan.
Yes.
For a country that is growing at 3% at 206 million people.
Okay.
That is a paltry sum. Like I said before, so many things need to be happening at the same time. And secondly, Nigeria is a signatory to that climate agreement we are talking about. And I said the whole world, we are going to renewable fuels. Technologies are evolving, not just for cars and others, for all technologies. They are going green. Nigeria should not be trying to take advantage of the fossil fuel. In fact, the world is saying get away from fossil fuel. Get on the wagon of the world. These technologies, okay, why are we forced to do a changeover now in the car industry? Because the car industry currently uses petrol. Now if they are moving away to electric, it therefore means that, you know, these people, they have these long-term plans. Okay. Once the US, China, and other countries go into it, before you know it, the full Europe will go entirely electric. Now, when they go electric, are we now I ask a question. When you are going somewhere, you must have an exit point in any plan. Okay. What is our exit point? Are we going in the future? Are we going to manufacture cars that are gas friendly, or are we going to switch to electric that time? That's the question. You know, because in the next 5 years, the biggest car demand will no longer be gas. I assure you that. Okay. Because there are forces governing the demand. Like I told you, the reason why we don't see electric vehicles in Nigeria is because it's just a new technology. It's coming up. In the next 5 years, the biggest demand for cars in this globally will be electric vehicles. Now, when that happens, what will happen to this gas master plan? What's the exit point? Are we planning in line with the world, or we are planning away from the world? That's what we want to get out of it. And like I tell you, we must be checking what we are saying. If you are part of a climate agreement, you must look at where the entire world is going to. You must check where the billions of dollars are flowing into. You don't go against the grain. You follow the world, because all technologies will be aligned to that electric technology. It already is showing. Volkswagen has been there for over 100 years. And yet Tesla, that started just 15 years ago, is worth more than Volkswagen, worth more than Toyota, Volkswagen, and all of them put together. Yes. It tells you that the world is going towards that direction. And so our policy makers should be looking towards such renewable fuels. Like electricity is available, it's abundant, can be reproduced. But gas is not renewable. And when you say it doesn't emit, setting up the gas infrastructure requires a lot of burning of fossil fuels in the process. Yeah. You know, anytime you try to invest in gas, you are also creating, there's a system to invest in the gas. Yes. You need a factory system to set up the gas infrastructure. That one itself is not climate friendly. Yeah. You know?
I think I want to just add to what he said. It mentioned an exit plan. I think that's very important. Our government can say that, you know, we're going to, in 2030, we're going to exit from gas. But there is no time, right? I say this often enough when I speak at conferences, that the effects of climate change as we know it, it's so glaring, it's so obvious, but it's been ignored. Okay. We live in Benin City, it's raining in November. Raining season normally, you know, it's from April to October. It's sunny in December. Everything is just basically upside down. Farmers don't know when to plant anymore. You know, seasons are basically changing. And if we're gonna wait till an exit point, let's say 2030, there is no time. And again, something about that he said that resonated with me. Last week I had an interview with a councillor from the UK, and we're talking about Africa and how our leaders sort of approach climate change and all of that. And I think a friend, a panelist in Ghana said, and I quote, you know, that when the government was challenged about doing something that was against, you know, the climate agreement, the government said they did not ratify it. That they signed the agreement, but it wasn't ratified. What does that even mean? So our government is basically in a similar shoe where we're saying, yeah, we did, you know, sign an agreement. We did attend a conference. We did shake hands with world leaders, but, you know, we didn't ratify it. So we can obviously move against the tide. You cannot be moving against the tide when everything is moving electric and renewable and you're going for gas. It's basically telling, the second, we're in the second, you know, revolution, the second industrial revolution. That's the truth. That's fact. For a car company that's been existing for less than 2 decades to be more than 6 of the biggest manufacturers, like, it's a big deal. So I'm sure the government has statisticians who obviously can correlate these facts and say this trajectory is not where we should be leading towards. If it was hydrogen gas, when I heard gas, I was like, okay, maybe it's if it was hydrogen gas, which has not even been feasible yet, that's the only actual green renewable alternative to gas or petroleum. If it was hydrogen gas, that's awesome. But this is not hydrogen, this is petroleum gas. It's basically you're saying, oh, it's no longer going to be liquid, it's going to be gas. Nothing changes.
It's like the same thing, just
system,
in different form.
In different forms.
Just emission.
Okay, now the federal government seems resolute on going forward with this plan because it says the money to support investors who will set up the assembly plants is already in the coffers of the CBN. So that means when you're ready, we're ready to give you money. What should be the way around it now? Since, like, okay, we need to move to gas. We can't subsidize petrol anymore. So we want to encourage the use of gas. Is there a way to make it cleaner, cheaper, and more effective?
It talks about sort of the demand curve when initially, when I was, I don't know, 10, and when gas wasn't as popular as it is now, buying gas was so affordable. Obviously, the Naira had more value then too, but it was so affordable. And now, you know, buying gas is like so expensive.
Yes.
The processes, I did a bit of chemistry and fractional distillation, the processes of renewing or refining, you know, crude oil to get the gases and the petroleums, it's not changed in what, how many years? I think centuries even. You know, it's the same process. It's not going to get cleaner.
Okay.
There are only alternatives. So it's either you're going this way, you're going that way. The government is saying they want to subsidize, you know, 250 billion. It sounds like a lot, but it's not. 250 countries that are investing billions of dollars into renewable energy. Look at New Zealand. They are very, very close to adopting an all-in, you know, electric car system. They are subsidizing that. So if the government really wants to move into cleaner energy, if that's the argument for gas, saying it's cleaner than petroleum, then they should be subsidizing. They should make electricity available.
No, we have challenge with electricity. I'm guessing that's the reason the federal government doesn't want to go in that direction, because it's like that is not feasible at this time, except we want to generate other means. Okay, we'll look at electricity, but is there a chance we could use biogas if we can't use petroleum gas?
Of course, that's what I'm saying. So when I say hydrogen gas, biogas, those are renewable sources.
Okay, if we can't use hydrogen gas, are there other biogas that are readily available in Nigeria that can be converted to power cars? We don't have to use diesel, we don't have to use petroleum.
I think the conversation shouldn't be can we and should we, or what are the alternatives. The conversation should be why are we even moving towards, why would you want to invest in
we don't know
cars?
Why, but that conversation started without consultation with other stakeholders like the motorists, the transporters. It started with the federal government and it's been on for about a year. And right now they are saying money is ready for that. So I think the why are we moving is left for the federal government to answer. But as a way to proffer solution, what can we do at this point?
I think what we can do, first things first is understanding your government, right?
Okay.
Whenever I talk, I often say that I don't approach, you know, issue relating climate change and environment the way you would approach it abroad. You know, maybe protesting or petitioning your government. You need to understand the government.
Our own peculiarities.
Our peculiarities. We're not a homogeneous people. Nigeria, we're so diverse. So if the government is saying they have made XYZ subsidies available, and we can no longer, you know, battle the why and thinking of what can we actually do. I think what I would say is that investment should be channeled better into, it's better you use gas to power the country's electricity.
Okay.
The US, as climate conscious as it is, still uses coal to power the electricity. The UK, same. So if you can divert that energy, it's a massive amount of energy. Like, nobody's going to judge or question. And in fact, if anything, it's more sustainable in a way than, you know, converting your grid into some sort of renewable source.
Okay.
So if you have that amount of money available, why not petition for solutions that can help generate electricity? I think the problem is, the big issue is, we are so comfortable with the fact that electricity is not a 24-hour thing in this part of the world. So when I'm talking, you're saying, you know, it's no longer about the why, but the truth is those need to be asked. Because if somebody is not asking those questions, even though they've moved on, there are experts like him, there are young people like myself who have solutions, readily available solutions that can actually help us move into a greener. We have gas, and Nigeria loves tapping our natural resources, and that's fine, and it's profitable. But if you want to do that, you shouldn't be going, it's just illogical to go against the tide of innovation and say the world is moving into electricity, but no, let's bring in the cars. And we don't, one thing why it's not going to work is because we don't manufacture cars. If we manufactured cars, or if we supported innocent vehicles in manufacturing cars, then we can say the government is going to get into like the manufacturing process and say they should have gas, you know, engines, and that would work. But getting in cars that we cannot even actually keep track of, we don't know how many, only 2 million registered, how many are unregistered, how do you convert every single one of those to be gas, and how do you now measure the impact that's having on the environment? It's an entire, you know, conversation that seems to have been left out and blindsided. So I think the solution really is for the government to communicate more with people who are experts in their fields.
All right. Now, while we hope that the government communicates with experts in this field to find a lasting solution and one that will be less expensive and will yield more results. Now, empowering investors with 250 billion naira to set up assembly plants. Currently, there are 50 conversion centers in the country. Now, what would be the benefit, economic benefit of this?
Yes, in the short run, we have the long run and the short run.
Yes, in the short
term, you know, like I told you, statecraft is a strategic enterprise, and so, but we approach statecraft using what we call tactical approaches. The short term, next 2-3 years. The biggest reason the government is going towards gas is just to save money. But,
is this actually saving money?
No. It's just the concept of penny wise, pound foolish. Like I told you, we should be looking at 20-30 years from now. Now, let's put it this way. If the whole world, which has the technology for cars, is moving towards electric vehicles, and then you go towards gas, you are making your country a dumping ground for
unused vehicles.
The millions of cars that are being produced currently will be dumped in countries that are not progressive. Then the educational system itself, you are going to wire it around gas, a dead weight a product that the world is moving away from. Are we not retrogressing? Like I said, we should be looking at the future. Solar power is abundant. Other electric power is abundant. Why don't we take advantage of the future instead of building according to our fears? The current fears is that we don't have enough money to subsidize and things like that. But then in the bid to win in the short term, you lose in the long term. So why don't you take a very hard approach? I mean, what we call, instead of using stopgap approaches, why don't you look at the long term and find a way to get that exit point I talked about? You have to do the gas. While you are doing that, there should be a master plan. The master plan is what happens when the world moves, when we get to time T. Are we going to, because if you give 250 billion out to people, you encourage people to go into conversion. Is conversion the future? Because in the future, the cars that will not need to be converted, the ones that you need to convert to be the dumped cars, the cars of the past. Now, is Nigeria going to be a country, we don't manufacture cars, we don't have the technology to rework these cars. Are we now going to be a dumping ground for cars that nobody needs anymore? Yes, the cars will be cheap at that time because they will not be dumped. But the question is, are we not signatory to that climate agreement if we are going against the grain of the climate agreement? So like I said, we are going to win in the short term. The short term is just simple. We are not going to win as a nation. We are going to win only in the government area, finance area. Because government is going to save money from subsidy in the short term and then maybe get money around to do some petty projects. But in the long term, we are looking at people. I told you 220 million people that are going to become 400 million people by 2050. If you use the simple rule of 70 at our growth rate, we are going to be 400 million by 2050. Look at 2050 here. So what happens?
We're almost halfway into it.
Yes, you're already there. You have to see it coming. What happens when you are going towards the gas plan and then the whole world is going towards electric? And I told you, I said 10 years from now, before you see a car that has a petrol tank that needs to be converted, you have to look for it. You have to look for it. It's like the world is going solar too with electricity. We are still investing in hydropower. People are going nuclear. People are going solar. There are other ways to get power now. And then we are still going. The reason why we don't solve our problems, we don't look at them from strategic angles. We tend to use what we call ad hoc methods. When the thing just comes, we just look for it to solve it. And then we get back to the drawing table. This drawing table we always get back to. It's because we don't have this long-term way of looking at things. Okay. We have to look at the future. We have to, and in fact, most of the reasons is because the old guards, the people that advise the government, they tend to be 50 and above. Yes. Okay, these are people who lived in that generation. The people that are solving these problems are in their 20s and 30s. So are we developing our economy for the present or for the future? We need to bring young people. The way he's talking, you can see he understands the issues. Okay, if he was in the team where they were making these plans, his input will be very important. How do you bring a 50-year-old man to be drawing a plan for a country that is going to get to 2050? You need to bring people who are tech savvy, people who understand the world, who understand where the direction of the world is going to. Just simple analogy just now. I told you a car company that just started 20 years ago is worth more than 3 of the largest car makers in the world. That should give you, it's just simple numbers.
Okay, so in a nutshell, this current plan of the government will not bring much economic benefit.
In the short term, it will bring revenue, but in the long term, it is total waste.
Okay, now looking at the long term, this may not be government plan, but maybe government will key into it. Let's look at a private innovation, private partnership, maybe with government. Now, what can Nigeria do to have clean source of energy to power cars, to power homes, and manufacturing that will be climate friendly? What are the options,
I think,
generally, that maybe private investors can begin to look at in the long run?
Yeah, my approach to solving climate change in Nigeria particularly has always been, we cannot say we are climate friendly cohesively, confidently, without having 24 hours electricity. It doesn't work, right? Nigeria doesn't have an air quality index, but it's so bad that, you know, over 100,000 people die every year due to air pollution related causes. Myself, I started climate activism because I am allergic to smoke, as trivial as it sounds. So what I'm trying to say is, while we can, on paper, talk about moving towards cleaner sources of energy, if I were to advise the government, if anything, I would say they already have a 250 billion naira fund somewhere. Why not channel that into, like you said, private partnerships or innovation that are using that gas, which is ever so slightly cleaner than whatever source they're using currently, to produce electricity itself. If you can produce electricity, you can produce electricity for the entire nation, then you can begin considering actually going, you know, clean. Because even if we, again, back to what I said in the beginning, even if we do succeed in converting cars, which is unrealistic in itself, if we're able to do that, then what happens to the millions of homes that still have to use petrol for their generators? So
it's counterproductive at the end of the day. Very
counterproductive. And just to add to what they said about short-term and long-term plans, Nigerians, we are, firstly, it's a very it's an old guard that makes our policies. We have very low numbers of young persons in government. But aside that, we are we're the kind of peoples that are for short-term benefits. It's almost ingrained in us. Myself, if we're going to do something, we're like, let me give a very sort of brief example. It's not related to climate change necessarily, but you know, there's been a recent influx in tech or cryptocurrency and stuff like that. There's been this sort of sense of, you know, if I get into this, I'm going to get money ASAP and I'll get out. So we are all for that, or the government at least is for that. But the truth is, if they want to do that, which doesn't work, even if they want to do that, like you said, there has to be something behind the scenes that we may not know about, that saying, you know, once we get to our tipping point, there is a tipping point. There always will be. In 5 years, for example, once we get to the tipping point, what do we need to start doing? How do we ensure that even if we're, you know, converting vehicles to gas, that we can produce ours and make the process way simpler, way more subsidized, or, you know, at least reduce the amount of importation of electric vehicles that come into the country?
Okay. All right. The conversion of cars to run on gas is not something that everyone is mandated, or every motorist is mandated to engage in. It's just if you want to, but the government is supporting the process. So now let's hope that they hear us, or they hear the climate activists, and they also hear you saying that it is not a plan that is sustainable over a long time. So now, but looking at 200, because I know that some persons will still do that, and because once money is released, a lot of persons will say, oh, it's way cheaper, it's more convenient. But 200,000 naira at least to convert one car, isn't that expensive? Is there a way to cut the cost? Going with that on a final note.
So how do you, like I said, We are not a socialist economy. It's capitalist. But when the government when they talk socialist. You see, we must let the system run itself automatically. The government is supposed to be a regulator. It's not supposed to be jumping these things, putting 200 billion somewhere. These decisions are taken by players, firms. So if you give 200 billion, it's like a loan to jumpstart a process. These firms have their own interest. They are going to charge. That amount is current estimate. Okay. Demand and supply will come in. If everybody is going towards gas, these fundamentals will come in. Government is not going to be telling those people how to charge. So, like I said, it is 250 now. When that signal comes up, it will go to 600,000. So that 200,000 is not fixed. Inflation and other things are affecting it. Now, knowing what you know about Nigeria, do you think the average Nigerian who does not have up to 500,000, they say 97% of Nigerians don't have up to 500,000 in their account, will have the incentive to convert their cars, spending 200 and above because they want to use gas? That's number one. Especially when, like I told you, the next 3-4 years, electric vehicles will come in. Do you think when you have cheaper options, would you want to use gas? That's the question. Another thing, we also did something. We are still going towards the diversification, towards energy sources, fossil fuel. I told you, we should be looking at human capital. That is the new oil. That is what would have made the whole thing cheaper. Yes, like I said, we need to even develop the mind of Nigerians to tap into this electric vehicle technology and find a way to localize it. It is easier to localize that technology than the old technology of cars. All you need to do is to have experts, engineers, electronics engineers, to study the process and find a way, if we can set up small factories here that are in line with the world. So maybe then we should be talking about conversion of cars to electric energy. We should be making effort to set up plants to build electric vehicles. Ahead of time. Ahead of time. Why the gas is there? The gas was not put, it's not compulsory we must use the gas. We always go back to resources, raw natural resources. The biggest resource is human resources, human potential, ability to create, generate wealth from the mind. And that requires standard quality education, something that is seriously lacking in this climate. We like resources where you can just tap it and pump it. That's not what the human, like I told you, what you can put in a truck, in a Dangote truck. 10 trucks will enter a small microchip now. So the new wealth is in software engineering and things like that. We should stop emphasizing this agriculture program, gas program. We should be looking at how do we use 65 million youths, the minds of 65 million youths. I just told you, the richest man in the world is worth about $283 billion. One man, human capital. Try and imagine if you are able to educate 20-30 million youths in the modern world. You see that we have more oil than we want. We have more gas. The gas is in the mind. It's not the one we see on the ground. We're out of time on this discussion, but before we let Joshua go, what do we stand to gain when we are conscious of our climate and when we invest in climate activities that can help the climate?
I think, firstly, economically, what most people don't even get to see because Nigerians are not educated enough for these things is from the COP, right, the Paris Climate Agreement. You know, every year whenever there are these conferences, there are massive amounts of, monies that are availed to African governments because we're feeling most of the impacts of climate change, though we contribute just 4% of it. So there are massive amounts of, not necessarily loans, more or less seed investments to the governments to convert. I think even during Obama's tenure, this is years ago, there was a pledge of about $100 billion to African nations to help us convert. If the government can tap into that and can work with us, then I guess the solution will be closer. But to answer your question more directly, we need to see climate change as something that affects us personally. I understand as an African and as a Nigerian the fact that if you have not eaten, let me speak pidgin, if you never chop belly full, you cannot be thinking about climate change. But the reality is we need to make it personal. We need to let people understand that you may not be able to eat if you don't solve climate change. You won't be able to plant, or if you plant, there will be flooding, or diseases are going to be spread. There's so many ways to make it matter to people, and I think when we're able to do that successfully, educate people, create awareness, even though it sounds cliche now, let the Nigerian peoples understand in their language, even in pidgin, understand that climate change is an issue that is a threat that's not deniable, and the truth is, the West, they are not even feeling it yet. Like Africa, we are feeling it. We are feeling the impact every single day. And if we do nothing, nobody's going to come to our aid.
Okay, and it's going to be a threat to us economically as well.
Economically, our personal health, and every which way, really, in the next 10, 20 years.
Thank you so much, Joshua Oluoshi, for being on the show. He's a climate activist, and from the way he's been talking, you could very well see that he's been advocating for us to take care of our environment so that the climate will be friendly to us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you again, Destiny. We're not done with Destiny. We're going to break. When we return quickly, we'll be talking about excise duty on non-alcoholic drinks. Stay. All right, thank you for staying. So let's look at the proposed reintroduction of excise duty on production and also importation of production actually of non-alcoholic drinks, as Manufacturers Association of Nigeria already decrying that reintroduction. So Destiny, they say, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria say that in 3 years the producers of non-alcoholic drinks could lose 1.9 trillion naira if the excise duty is reintroduced.
Yeah.
So in terms of ease of doing business in Nigeria, what's your take on that?
The idea of these excise duties, for some time now, about 3 to 4 years, the government has been saying they want to diversify away from direct taxes to indirect taxes. And it's part of the general plan to move away from direct sources of tax to indirect sources of tax. But then the problem I have here is the timing. Nigeria is just trying to recover from a recession. Growth rate is just pegged at about 2.5%. And so when a society is trying to get out of recession and jumpstart, that's not the best time to tax people, to increase the taxes. As I speak to you now, they just increased VAT the other day. And then the taxes are getting too much. It's a problem of timing. So while the idea is excellent, it's going to generate more revenue for the government, we have to look at the total demand pattern. These people are going to lose an estimated 1.9 trillion in the next 3 years in terms of fall in demand. Because the price of their products, because they are going to shift some of the price of their products up. Those people that can shift it. And then what happens? The people will not be able to buy. And if they cannot buy it, you affect their sales. That's what they are saying. So if you tax these products, then the demand will fall. The demand will go down because the price will be too much. And so they will lose money. So the question is, are we not squeezing them too much? Are we not squeezing commerce and manufacturing in this country by putting taxes everywhere? It's now multiple taxes, excise duties, VAT and everything. So it's happening too much at the same time. And not at a time when Nigeria is trying to get out of recession and pull itself out. So like I said, the calculations do not favor economic development or economic growth at the moment. What we should be looking at is shifting it to maybe 2-3 years from now. For now, the government... But
then, wouldn't the complaint be the same?
No, it will not.
Even if it's taken to 3 years from now?
No, it will not. It will not because, like I told you, timing is of the essence. If you add that tax to it now, you are squeezing the business community. Currently, exchange rate problems are already affecting them. Don't you feel the heat where you are sitting down? The price of products are already up. Now, if you tax those products whose price are already up, it will go more up. Exchange rate problems, exchange rate is very terrible now. Prices are already rising, cost of production is rising, this import, the security amenities, the economy is not in a very balanced shape to be taxing more. Like I said, we should give some break. The break is allow the business community to come out from recession, to bounce back to normal business, and that's the best time to do it. There's a time for everything. Like I said, if you tax, there's a tax that Nigerian bears that is different from the taxes other countries bear. I call it the Nigerian tax.
And what is that?
The Nigerian tax is the bad economy. It's already a tax. Bad road, petrol expensive, gas expensive, everything is expensive. That's a tax on its own. Cost of living in Nigeria is already very too much. Now, if you add official taxes to the tax that the typical Nigerian bears, it becomes too burdensome for the person to deal with. So what we need to do is allow people to breathe. In other countries, I think the program came because if you check other countries, they are doing the same thing too.
Okay.
You know, countries are doing that, but these countries that are doing that, most of them do not experience all the problems that we're experiencing in this country.
So the problem is actually lifting from policies of other countries,
yes,
not minding our
we are
peculiarity.
we forget the peculiarities here.
Okay.
Unemployment rate is high, inflation rate is high, and it's not the best time. You will do such things when your economy is stable, when the market is. One of the principles of tax is convenience.
Okay.
You don't tax people when they don't want to pay. You are going to just simply make them dodge the taxes.
Okay.
Okay. So, although it's difficult to dodge this one, I think it's a timing problem. It's a timing problem. So,
Okay.
why the Manufacturer Association, once they are complaining, this is a major pressure group, they are complaining, the government should call them. In fact, they should set up a roundtable, discuss with these players.
Okay.
Before they design this policy, let all of them put their inputs on the table and see when is the best time to set up this tax system so that we can.
And perhaps we'll look at the rates.
Yes, the rates.
Okay.
The rates.
Thank you very much.
It appears too much for everybody to bear at the moment. Yes.
Okay, we'll leave it at that today. Thank you very much, Destiny Obu, for being on the show.
Yes.
Thank you so much for staying with us. It's been a wonderful one. Next week promises to be even better and more exciting. My name is Blessing Aiche. Do enjoy your weekend.
Yes.